Ethan, you can't be serious, I exclaimed, my eyes widening as I stared at my younger brother across the kitchen table. He just dropped a bombshell that threatened to shatter our family's peace. Ethan's boyish grin faltered for a moment. Come on, Sophia. It's not like I'm moving to Mars. It's just a new job in Chicago. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. At 38, I'd always been the protective older sister, and the thought of Ethan moving halfway across the country sent a wave of anxiety through me. But what about Mom and Dad? They're not getting any younger, you know. They'll be fine, Ethan said, waving his hand dismissively. Besides, you're here to look after them. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of resentment at his casual attitude. That's not the point, Ethan. We're a family. We're supposed to stick together. Before Ethan could respond, the back door swung open, and my husband David walked in, his arms laden with grocery bags. Hey, you two, what's with the serious faces? I turned to David, grateful for his calming presence. Ethan's told me he's moving to Chicago for a new job. David's eyebrows shot up. Wow, that's big news. Congratulations, Ethan. I shot David a look that clearly said, whose side are you on? Ethan beamed. Thanks, David. At least someone's excited for me. I sighed, realizing I was fighting a losing battle. I am excited for you, Ethan. I'm just worried. Ethan's expression softened. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I know, sis, but this is a great opportunity for me, and for Abigail, too. At the mention of Ethan's wife, I felt a knot form in my stomach. Have you told her yet? Ethan's smile faltered. Not exactly. I wanted to run it by you first. I raised an eyebrow. And why's that? Ethan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Well, there's something else I need to tell you. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced down at the screen and froze. It was from Abigail. Sophia, I need to talk to you. It's urgent. I looked up at Ethan, my heart pounding. Ethan, what's going on? He took a deep breath. Abigail's pregnant. The room fell silent. David, who had been putting away groceries, stopped mid-motion, a can of soup suspended in the air. Pregnant? I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. But I thought you two weren't ready for kids yet. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit he'd had since childhood. We weren't. It just happened. I glanced back at my phone, Abigail's message burning a hole in my pocket. Does she know about Chicago? Ethan shook his head. Not yet. I wanted to tell her in person, but now with the baby. He trailed off, looking lost. I felt a surge of protectiveness for my little brother. Despite our 8-year age gap, we'd always been close. Now, seeing him so conflicted, I knew I had to put aside my own fears and be there for him. Ethan, I said softly, you need to talk to Abigail. Now. He nodded, looking grateful. You're right. I'll head home and tell her everything. As Ethan stood to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a storm that would change our family forever. I watched him walk out the door, my heart heavy with a mixture of excitement and dread. David came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. He'll be okay, Sophia. They both will. I leaned back into his embrace, hoping he was right. But as I felt my phone buzz again with another message from Abigail, I couldn't help but wonder what other surprises were in store for our family. The shrill cry of a baby pierced the air, and I couldn't help but wince. It had been a year since Sarah was born, and I still wasn't used to the constant noise that seemed to follow my niece wherever she went. Shh, it's okay, sweetie, Abigail cooed, bouncing Sarah on her hip. We were gathered in my parents' living room for what was supposed to be a family dinner, but the tension in the air was palpable. Ethan sat in the corner, his eyes glued to his phone. He hadn't said more than 2 words since they arrived, and I couldn't help but notice the distance between him and Abigail. It was as if an invisible wall had been erected between them. So, Ethan, Mom said, trying to break the awkward silence, how's the new job going? Ethan looked up, startled. Oh, it's fine. Busy, you know. Abigail rolled her eyes. He's always busy these days. Too busy for his own family, apparently. I exchanged a worried glance with David. This wasn't the first time we'd witnessed this kind of exchange between them. In fact, it seemed to be happening more and more frequently. Well, we're just glad you could make it tonight, Dad chimed in, ever the peacemaker. It's been a while since we've all been together. Abigail let out a humorless laugh. Yeah, well, don't get used to it. We probably won't be able to make it to the next one. Right, Ethan? Ethan's jaw clenched. "Can we not do this here, Abigail?" I felt my heart sink. This wasn't the happy family I had envisioned when Ethan first told me about Abigail's pregnancy. Something was very wrong, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was only going to get worse. As the evening wore on, I found myself watching Abigail closely. She seemed distracted, constantly checking her phone and barely engaging in conversation. When it came time to feed Sarah, she practically shoved the baby into Ethan's arms. "You do it," she snapped. "I need some air." Without waiting for a response, Abigail stormed out onto the porch. I hesitated for a moment before following her. "Everything okay?" I asked, stepping out into the cool night air. Abigail jumped, quickly shoving her phone into her pocket. "Jesus, Sophia, you scared me." "Sorry," I said, not entirely convinced by her reaction. "I just wanted to check on you. You seem upset." Abigail's eyes narrowed. "I'm fine. Just tired. Being a mom is harder than I thought it would be." I nodded sympathetically. "I can imagine. But we're all here to help. You don't have to do this alone." For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of guilt in Abigail's eyes, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a cold, hard stare. "I don't need your help," she said flatly, "or anyone else's. I can handle my own family." Before I could respond, Abigail brushed past me and went back inside. I stood there for a moment, stunned by the venom in her voice. When I finally returned to the living room, I found Ethan cradling a now sleeping Sarah, a look of pure love on his face. The sight should have warmed my heart, but instead it filled me with dread. Something was very wrong in my brother's marriage, and I had a sinking feeling that little Sarah was caught in the middle of it all. As the evening came to a close and Ethan's family prepared to leave, I pulled my brother aside. "Ethan," I whispered, "is everything okay? With you and Abigail, I mean." He hesitated, and for a moment I thought he might confide in me. But then Abigail called out from the doorway, "Ethan, we're leaving, now." Ethan's face closed off. "Everything's fine, Sophia. Don't worry about us." But as I watched them drive away, Sarah's car seat securely fastened between them, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the calm before the storm. And I had no idea how to protect my little brother from the hurricane that was coming. The mall was bustling with Saturday shoppers, but all I could focus on was the growing pit in my stomach. I'd agreed to meet Ethan and his family here, hoping to mend some of the rifts that had been growing over the past few months. But as I scanned the food court, I saw only Ethan, slumped over a table with little Sarah squirming in his lap. "Ethan?" I called out, weaving through the crowd. "Where's Abigail?" He looked up, dark circles under his eyes. "She's not coming. Said she had a headache." I bit back a sigh. Another excuse. Another missed family outing. Well, we're here now. Why don't we take Sarah to the playground? As we walked, Ethan's shoulders sagged. "I don't know what to do anymore, Sophia. It's like Abigail's a completely different person." We reached the indoor playground, and Sarah immediately toddled off towards the slide. I watched her go, my heart aching for the little girl caught in the middle of all this. "What do you mean?" I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I already knew. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "She's never home. When she is, she's always on her phone. And the way she looks at Sarah sometimes, it's like she resents her." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Ethan, that's serious. Have you tried talking to her?" He let out a bitter laugh. "Talking? We barely speak anymore. And when we do, it always ends in a fight." As we watched Sarah play, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The happy family I'd envisioned for my brother was crumbling before my eyes. Suddenly, Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face darkening. "It's Abigail. She wants me to come home now, says it's an emergency." "Do you want me to come with you?" I offered, already dreading the answer. He shook his head. "No, I'd better handle this alone. Can you watch Sarah for a bit?" I nodded, watching as he hurried away. Sarah came running back, her little face scrunched up in confusion. "Where'd Daddy go?" "He'll be back soon, sweetie," I said, forcing a smile. "How about we get some ice cream?" An hour later, I was starting to worry. Ethan wasn't answering his phone, and Sarah was getting fussy. I decided to drive her home, hoping to catch Ethan there. As we pulled up to their house, I noticed an unfamiliar car in the driveway. My heart raced as I unbuckled Sarah and approached the front door. I was about to knock when I heard raised voices from inside. Curiosity got the better of me, and I peered through the window. What I saw made my blood run cold. Abigail was there, locked in a heated embrace with a man I'd never seen before. They were kissing passionately, oblivious to the world around them. I stumbled back, my mind reeling. Abigail was having an affair. The pieces suddenly fell into place. The missed family gatherings, the constant phone checking, the resentment towards Ethan and Sarah. Just then I heard the screech of tires. Ethan's car came barreling down the street, skidding to a stop in front of the house. He leapt out, his face a mask of fury. "Ethan, wait!" I called out, but it was too late. He stormed past me and threw open the front door. The shouting that erupted from inside the house made Sarah start to cry. I held her close, my heart breaking for my brother and this innocent child. As the yelling intensified, I knew I had to make a decision. Should I intervene, potentially making things worse, or should I take Sarah and leave, sparing her from this ugly scene? With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and dialed David's number. "I need you to come get us," I said, my voice trembling. "It's bad, David. Really bad." As I hung up, I looked down at Sarah's tear-stained face. In that moment, I made a silent vow. No matter what happened, I would protect this little girl. Even if it meant going against my own brother and the family I'd always known. The storm I'd been dreading had finally arrived, and I had a sinking feeling that none of us would emerge unscathed. The shrill ring of my phone jolted me awake. Blinking in the darkness, I fumbled for the device, my heart racing as I saw Ethan's name on the screen. "Ethan?" I answered, my voice thick with sleep. "What's wrong?" His words came out in a rush, choked with emotion. "Sophia, I need you. Can you come over, please?" I was already out of bed, searching for my clothes. "I'm on my way, just hold on, okay?" The drive to Ethan's house was a blur. As I pulled up, I saw him sitting on the front steps, his head in his hands. The sight of my little brother looking so broken made my chest ache. "Ethan," I called softly, approaching him. "What happened?" He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed and hollow. "It's over, Sophia. Abigail and we're getting divorced." The words hit me like a physical blow. Despite everything I'd seen and suspected, hearing it out loud made it painfully real. "Oh, Ethan?" I whispered, sitting beside him and pulling him into a hug. "I'm so sorry." He clung to me, his body shaking with silent sobs. We sat there for what felt like hours, the weight of his pain settling over us like a heavy blanket. Finally, Ethan pulled away, wiping his eyes. "There's more," he said, his voice barely audible. "Abigail, she's leaving, taking Sarah with her." I felt a surge of anger. "She can't do that. Sarah's your daughter, too." Ethan's face crumpled. "Is she, though?" My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" He took a shuddering breath. "Abigail confessed. Sarah, she might not be mine." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I gripped the porch railing, trying to steady myself. "Are you sure? Have you done a paternity test?" Ethan shook his head. "Not yet. But Abigail swears it's true. Says it's why she's been so distant, why she couldn't bond with Sarah. The guilt was eating her alive." My mind raced, thinking back to that day at the mall, the man I'd seen Abigail with. Had it been going on that long? Or was there someone else? "What are you going to do?" I asked, dreading the answer. Ethan's eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of pain and determination. "I'm going to fight for Sarah. No matter what a test might say, she's my daughter. I've loved her since the day she was born." Pride swelled in my chest, mingling with the ache in my heart. "We'll fight with you, Ethan. All of us. You're not alone in this." He nodded, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "I know. That's why I called you first. I need your help telling Mom and Dad." The thought of breaking this news to our parents made my stomach churn, but I knew it had to be done. "Of course, we'll do it together." As we sat there, planning our next steps, a terrible realization dawned on me. I knew about Abigail's affair. I'd seen it with my own eyes, and I'd said nothing. Guilt crashed over me like a tidal wave. Could I have prevented this if I'd spoken up sooner? Had my silence contributed to the destruction of my brother's family? Ethan must have sensed my inner turmoil. "Sophia, what is it?" I opened my mouth, the truth on the tip of my tongue, but looking at Ethan's broken expression, I couldn't bring myself to add to his pain. Not now, when he needed me to be strong. "Nothing," I lied, hating myself for it. "I'm just processing everything." As the sun began to rise, casting a pale light over Ethan's tear-stained face, I made a silent vow. I would do whatever it took to help my brother through this, even if it meant carrying the weight of my own secret. But as we stood to go inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that my silence might come back to haunt us all. The aroma of freshly baked apple pie filled the air as I bustled around the kitchen, preparing for our monthly family dinner. It had been 6 months since Ethan's divorce, and tonight he was bringing someone new to meet us. My stomach churned with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "Sophia, honey, do you need any help?" Mom called from the living room. "I'm fine, Mom," I replied, wiping my hands on my apron. "Just finishing up." As I set the last dish on the table, the doorbell rang. My heart leaped into my throat. This was it. I heard Dad's booming voice. "Ethan, my boy, come in, come in." Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the living room. Ethan stood there, looking happier than I'd seen him in years. Beside him was a petite woman with warm brown eyes and a shy smile. "Everyone," Ethan said, his voice filled with pride. "This is Rachel." Rachel waved timidly. "It's so nice to meet you all. Ethan's told me so much about you." As we settled around the dinner table, I couldn't help but study Rachel. She was attentive, laughing at Dad's corny jokes and asking Mom about her garden. But most importantly, she looked at Ethan like he hung the moon. "So, Rachel," I said, passing her the mashed potatoes, "how did you and Ethan meet?" Rachel's eyes lit up. "Oh, it was the funniest thing. We literally bumped into each other at the grocery store." I dropped my basket. Oranges went everywhere. As she recounted the story, Ethan reached over and squeezed her hand, a gesture so tender it made my heart ache. This was what he deserved, what I'd always wanted for him. But as the evening wore on, a nagging voice in the back of my mind wouldn't be silenced. What about Sarah? What about the paternity test Ethan had mentioned but never followed through on? When Rachel excused herself to use the restroom, I seized the opportunity. "Ethan," I whispered, leaning closer to him, "have you told Rachel about everything?" His smile faltered. "Not yet." "I will, Sophia. I need more time." Before I could respond, Rachel returned, and the moment was lost. As we were clearing the dishes, my phone buzzed. I glanced at it, nearly dropping the plate I was holding. It was a text from Abigail. "We need to talk. It's about Sarah. Meet me tomorrow at the park." My hands shook as I shoved the phone back in my pocket. What could Abigail possibly want? And why now, when things were finally looking up for Ethan? "Sophia?" David's concerned voice broke through my thoughts. "You okay?" I forced a smile. "Fine, just tired." As we said our goodbyes, Rachel hugged me tightly. "Thank you for such a wonderful evening. I'm so happy to finally be a part of this family." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. She had no idea about the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. That night, as I lay in bed, my mind raced. Should I tell Ethan about Abigail's text? Should I meet her alone? And what about Rachel? She seemed so perfect, so right for Ethan. But she was walking into a situation far more complicated than she realized. I turned to look at David, peacefully sleeping beside me. How I wished I could share this burden with him. But I'd made a promise to Ethan, a promise of silence that was becoming harder to keep with each passing day. As the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, I made my decision. I would meet Abigail. I would hear what she had to say. And then, no matter the consequences, I would tell Ethan everything. About the affair I'd witnessed, about this mysterious meeting, about the doubts that had been eating away at me. It was time for the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Because if there was one thing I'd learned, it was that secrets had the power to destroy everything we held dear. With a heavy heart, I reached for my phone and typed out a response to Abigail. "I'll be there." The park bench felt cold beneath me as I waited, my heart pounding in my chest. I hadn't told anyone about this meeting with Abigail, not even David. The weight of secrets was becoming unbearable. I spotted her approaching, Sarah's tiny hand clasped in hers. My niece had grown so much, her curls bouncing as she toddled along. The sight of her made my throat tighten. "Sophia," Abigail said, her voice clipped. "Thank you for coming." I nodded, unable to find words. Sarah looked up at me with curious eyes, and I forced a smile. "I'll make this quick," Abigail continued. "I'm moving to California, and I'm taking Sarah with me." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "What? You can't just—" "I can, and I will," she cut me off. "I have full custody." Ethan signed away his rights. My mind reeled. When had this happened? Why hadn't Ethan told me? But what about visitation? I asked, grasping at straws. Ethan loves Sarah. You can't take her away from him completely. Abigail's eyes hardened. Ethan made his choice. He has his new life now, doesn't he? With that woman, Rachel, is it? The bitterness in her voice was palpable. I felt a surge of anger on Ethan's behalf. That's not fair, Abigail. You were the one who— Who what, Sophia? She challenged. Go on, say it. I bit my tongue. The words had an affair dying in my throat. Instead, I asked, does Ethan know about this move? Not yet, Abigail admitted. That's why I wanted to talk to you first. I need you to tell him. Me? I exclaimed. This isn't my responsibility, Abigail. You need to talk to Ethan yourself. Just then, Sarah tugged on Abigail's sleeve. Mommy, I'm hungry. Abigail's face softened as she looked at her daughter. We'll get lunch soon, sweetie. Turning back to me, her expression hardened again. I'm giving you a chance to break it to him gently. Take it or leave it. With that, she stood, pulling Sarah along with her. As they walked away, Sarah turned and waved at me, her innocent smile like a knife to my heart. I sat there, stunned, as the implications of what had just happened washed over me. How could I possibly tell Ethan that he was about to lose his daughter? My phone buzzed, startling me out of my thoughts. It was a text from Mom. Sophia, come quick. Abigail's here at the house. She's demanding to see Ethan. Panic surged through me. I jumped up, racing to my car. The drive to my parents' house was a blur of fear and dread. As I pulled up, I saw Abigail's car in the driveway. Sarah was in the back seat, playing with a toy. I rushed inside to find a scene of chaos. Abigail was in the living room, her face flushed with anger. Mom and Dad stood nearby, looking bewildered. And there, in the middle of it all, was Ethan, with Rachel by his side. How dare you? Abigail was shouting. You bring her here to your parents' house where our daughter visits. Ethan's face was a mask of confusion and hurt. Abigail, what are you talking about? Rachel has every right to be here. We're engaged. The room fell silent. I saw the shock on my parents' faces, the triumph in Rachel's eyes, and the fury radiating from Abigail. Engaged. Abigail spat. Well, congratulations. I hope you'll be very happy together because you'll never see Sarah again. What? Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. I stepped forward, my voice shaking. Ethan, there's something I need to tell you. All eyes turned to me. In that moment, I felt the weight of every secret, every unspoken truth pressing down on me. I took a deep breath, knowing that what I was about to say would change everything. Abigail is moving to California, I began, my voice gaining strength, and she's taking Sarah with her. The room erupted into chaos once more. As accusations flew and tears fell, I caught Rachel's eye. The look of betrayal on her face told me that she was only now realizing the complexity of the situation she had walked into. In the midst of the turmoil, I heard the sound of a car engine starting. Looking out the window, I saw Abigail's car pulling away, Sarah's confused face visible in the back window. This was it, the moment of truth, and I knew that whatever happened next would tear our family apart in ways we might never recover from. The tires screeched as Ethan peeled out of the driveway, leaving us all in stunned silence. Rachel stood frozen, her eyes wide with shock. Mom and Dad exchanged worried glances, and I felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on me. I have to go after him, I said, grabbing my keys. Sophia, wait, Rachel called out, her voice trembling. What's going on? What aren't you telling me? I hesitated, torn between chasing after Ethan and explaining the situation to Rachel, but there was no time. I'm sorry, Rachel. I'll explain everything later, I promise. The drive to Abigail's house was a blur of panic and regret. How had things spiraled so out of control? As I pulled up, I saw Ethan's car haphazardly parked in the driveway, the driver's door still open. Heart pounding, I rushed to the front door, which was slightly ajar. The sound of raised voices led me to the living room, where I found Ethan and Abigail locked in a heated confrontation. You can't take her away from me, Ethan shouted, his face red with anger and pain. Sarah is my daughter. Abigail's laugh was bitter and cold. Is she, Ethan? Are you sure about that? The room fell silent, and I felt my blood run cold. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading for months. Ethan's voice was barely a whisper when he spoke. What are you talking about? Abigail's eyes darted to me for a split second before she dropped the bombshell. Sarah isn't your daughter, Ethan. She never was. I watched as the color drained from my brother's face. He stumbled backward, groping for something to hold on to. I rushed to his side, supporting him as he sank onto the couch. "That's not possible," Ethan mumbled, shaking his head. "We were trying for a baby. You told me." "I lied," Abigail said, her voice devoid of emotion. "I was already pregnant when we got married. I hoped it could work, that you'd never know." The pieces started falling into place, Abigail's distance, her resentment towards Sarah, the affair I'd witnessed. It all made a horrible kind of sense. "You knew," Ethan said suddenly, his eyes locking onto mine. "Didn't you, Sophia?" I felt the air leave my lungs. I suspected, but I didn't know for sure." "And you didn't tell me?" The hurt in his voice was unbearable. "I wanted to protect you," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Both of you." Ethan stood up abruptly, pacing the room like a caged animal. "Who's the father?" he demanded, turning to Abigail. She looked away, refusing to answer. "It's the man I saw you with at the mall, isn't it?" I blurted out, unable to keep the secret any longer. "The one you were kissing." Abigail's head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. "You saw us?" Ethan's laugh was hollow and pained. "So everyone knew but me. Is that it?" The sound of a car door slamming made us all jump. Through the window, I saw Rachel getting out of a taxi, her face a mask of determination. "Oh, God," I breathed. "Ethan, Rachel's here." As if on cue, the doorbell rang. We all stood frozen, the weight of secrets and lies hanging heavy in the air. Ethan moved first, striding towards the door with purpose. I followed, my heart in my throat. As he flung open the door, Rachel's eyes widened at the sight of us. "Ethan, what's going on? Why did you run off like that?" Before Ethan could respond, a small voice called out from upstairs. "Daddy?" We all turned to see Sarah standing at the top of the stairs, her little face scrunched up in confusion. In that moment, I saw the conflict raging in Ethan's eyes, the love he felt for the child he'd raised, warring with the pain of betrayal. And I knew that whatever he decided next would change all of our lives forever. "Rachel," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion, "there's something I need to tell you. About Sarah. About everything." As Rachel stepped inside, closing the door behind her, I braced myself for the storm that was about to break. The truth was finally coming out, and there was no telling what would be left standing when it was over. The weeks following Ethan's revelation were a whirlwind of emotions and difficult conversations. I watched my little brother struggle with the weight of his new reality, torn between his love for Sarah and the pain of Abigail's betrayal. Today we were all gathered at my parents' house. Ethan, Rachel, David, Mom, Dad, and me. The tension in the air was palpable as we waited for Abigail to arrive with Sarah. "Are you sure about this?" I asked Ethan softly, placing a hand on his arm. He nodded, his jaw set with determination. "I have to do this, Sophia. For Sarah, for all of us." The doorbell rang and we all held our breath. Mom went to answer it, and moments later, Sarah came bounding into the room, her face lighting up at the sight of Ethan. "Daddy!" she cried, throwing herself into his arms. I watched as Ethan hugged her tightly, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. Rachel stood nearby, her expression a mix of love and uncertainty. Abigail entered the room, her face guarded. "Ethan," she said stiffly, "I hope you've reconsidered your decision." Ethan stood, still holding Sarah. "I haven't, Abigail. Sarah deserves to know the truth, and she deserves to have all of us in her life." "Even though she's not your biological daughter," Abigail challenged. "Especially because of that," Ethan replied firmly. "Biology doesn't make a family. Love does." I felt a surge of pride for my brother. Despite everything, he was choosing love over anger, forgiveness over resentment. Rachel stepped forward, taking Ethan's hand. "We want Sarah to be a part of our family," she said. "All of us, together." Abigail's eyes widened in surprise. "You're okay with this?" she asked Rachel. Rachel nodded, her voice steady. "It's not easy, but Sarah needs all of us. And," she paused, placing a hand on her stomach, "our baby will need their big sister." The room fell silent as the implications of Rachel's words sank in. Ethan's face broke into a wide smile, and he pulled Rachel close, kissing her tenderly. "You're pregnant?" I gasped, joy bubbling up inside me. Rachel nodded, beaming. "We just found out last week." As congratulations filled the air, I noticed Abigail standing apart, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. I approached her cautiously. "Abigail," I said softly, "I know this isn't easy for you, but we can make this work, for Sarah's sake." She met my gaze, tears shimmering in her eyes. How can you all be so forgiving after everything I've done? I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully, because that's what family does. We forgive, we heal, and we move forward together. Slowly, hesitantly, Abigail nodded. I'd like that, she whispered. As we all gathered around Sarah, explaining in simple terms that she had a big, loving family with many parents who cared for her, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but we were facing it together. Later that evening, as David and I were getting ready for bed, he pulled me close. You did it, Sophia, he murmured. You kept this family together through everything. I shook my head, overwhelmed by the events of the day. We all did it together. As I drifted off to sleep, I reflected on the journey we'd been through. The secrets, the pain, the betrayals, they had all led us to this moment of healing and new beginnings. Our family wasn't perfect. It was messy, complicated, and at times heartbreaking. But it was ours. And as I thought about Sarah, about Ethan and Rachel's unborn child, and about the love that had carried us through our darkest moments, I knew that we were stronger for having weathered the storm together. In the end, it wasn't about biology or traditional family structures. It was about choosing love, day after day, even when it was difficult. It was about forgiveness, second chances, and the unbreakable bonds that tie us together. As I closed my eyes, I smiled, feeling grateful for the imperfect, beautiful tapestry of our family. We had faced our demons, confronted our truths, and emerged stronger on the other side. And whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew we would face them the same way we always had, together as a family.